Hiya, Barbie.
Hi, Ken.
You want to go do a podcast?
Sure.
Jump in.
Ladies and gentlemen, Barbies and Kens, Kellys of all ages, and everyone else, welcome to Binging Barbie, a Barbie movie podcast. I'm your host, Jay, and with me I have my wonderful co-host. Look how low he's sunk, a royal bird languishing in the stink hole where they keep prisoners and ruffians. John.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to stoop so low. Oh, don't look at me. Don't look at me.
For those of you just joining us, we are a podcast about Barbie movies. Every week we watch one of the straight-to-DVD animated Barbie movies, and we rate its story, characters, animation, voice acting, and music to see how it stacks up. This week we will be talking about the 11th Barbie animated movie and the second Barbie musical, Barbie as the Island Princess. Sounds exotic.
Yes.
Very, very tropical getaway.
Sure.
Yeah, it was released September 18th on DVD and followed 5 days later with a release on Nickelodeon. This is actually the first Barbie movie to premiere on DVD before Nickelodeon in a while. September. This is 2007. I forgot to mention the year.
Yeah.
Directed by Greg Richardson, who, once again, he's directed a few of these.
Barbie, but made in 2007. You know.
Oh no, now we have to edit that together.
We do. Sorry.
Oh man, that's gonna be so dark. But hey, speaking of editing, yeah, Greg Richardson started as the editor on a lot of these Barbie movies and then moved up to director with Magic of Pegasus, and he did the last Barbie princess movie as well, 12 Dancing Princesses, and now he's working on Island Princess. And once again, we have our favorite writing team, Cliff Ruby and Alana Lesser. And as I mentioned, this is a musical. This is our first full musical since Princess and the Pauper.
Right.
The music is by Arnie Roth, and the original song lyrics are by Megan Cavallari, Amy Powers, and Rob Hudnut. They're the ones who did the music for Princess and the Pauper, so the whole team's back. This is kind of the spiritual successor to Princess and the Pauper in some ways.
In some ways, yes. Very different style for this one.
Yeah, sure. It's very unique among these Barbie movies. It takes its inspiration from Tarzan, the Edgar Rice Burroughs character, though a little bit more refined. Here the Barbie plays the Tarzan character, but she's not nearly as...
This actually is a lot more akin to George of the Jungle.
Oh, okay.
Because here, Barbie goes to the mainland, where Tarzan mostly stays.
Well...
At least the Disney version.
Yeah, the original Tarzan story is he's an English lord who, as a kid, gets stuck on this island, and I believe he actually does go back to England. And there's actually a movie from the 90s where a live-action adaptation where they show him going back to England and being part of high society there. But yeah, the story of Tarzan, as a lot of people are familiar with it, is more about the island, whereas here, Barbie starts out on the island, and then by the 15-minute mark, she's off and away, and we never see the island again.
I could also say that this is similar to The Tempest or even The Jungle Book. There's a lot of stories where characters are lost as a child and then raised by animals or some other person, or they're on an island.
Yeah.
But then this hunk of love interest comes in and takes them home.
Yeah, and it even has similarities in that to The Little Mermaid.
Mm-hmm.
Not as much as some of these other Barbie movies have had similarities, but there is some of that. And then there's also a little bit of Dr. Doolittle.
Oh,
just
yeah.
In terms of
that's
Barbie
right.
can talk to animals here, and that becomes...
Why she can talk to animals, we don't know. She just does.
I mean, she grew up with the animals,
That
so...
doesn't mean the same thing. Like, she has conversations in English with them.
Yes.
Everyone else hears noises. Why doesn't she hear the noises?
The mechanics of it are a bit odd. It's using the logic that these Barbie movies have had before, where starting with Princess and the Pauper, the humans can't understand the animals, but the animals can all understand each other.
Right.
So here, it's the same thing, but now Barbie can speak this, well, can understand this universal language. She speaks to the animals in English. How she learned English, I don't know. I don't think they need to explain that.
Well, no. Like, she was a little girl. She would have known
Yeah.
English.
How her English was good enough to survive her being on that island for that long without any other contact with other people speaking English?
I mean, she'd be speaking it the entire time to the animals.
Yeah. I don't know. It isn't an issue with the movie, I don't think. It's just kind of things that made me pause and think, the logic here is not a real world logic. It's very
Of course
magical.
not. She talked crocodiles away from eating someone. Where's the logic in that?
Well, they were nice crocodiles.
Still, crocs
just a
are not
little
going to be
hungry.
talked down from wanting to eat something or they're hungry.
Are there crocodiles in the South Pacific?
I mean, there's crocodiles wherever you go, but yeah, sure. Who knows?
Yeah, now I need to look
Do
this
islands
up.
have elephants? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, elephants are good swimmers, but I don't know if there are South Pacific elephants or red pandas
And
or
peacocks.
peacocks.
Do you ever see
This
them
island is a
together?
little bit strange in terms of the flora and fauna.
It is.
It's all taking these sort of exotic animals and bringing them together into this one place.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting. This is the most zoologically diverse Barbie movie we've had thus far.
For sure, yeah. Red Panda was like, oh, look, a red panda. That's so different. Although, I think the red panda would have worked nicely with our villain, because their color schemes match.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's dive into the story a little bit. So, The very vague summary is it starts off, there's a storm, and we start off on this island where a gay couple, a red panda and a peacock the movie never confirms it, but they basically act like a couple.
It's Timon and Pumbaa, pretty much.
Yeah. They find a young girl washed up on the shore of their island paradise, and they choose to adopt her and raise her. And then we flash forward several years later. Ro, the little girl, is now a teenager or young adult, lives happily with her two gay fathers and adopted sister, Tika the elephant. Ro is mostly happy until a human prince shows up on the island and causes her to kind of question her place in the world and think about, where did she come from? Who were her real parents? And so she decides to go and find answers, and her family joins her, and they get back to the prince's kingdom of, I believe it's Apollonia.
Something.
Yeah, the name isn't important. And the prince's parents, though, have promised him to the daughter of Ariana, Queen Ariana, who's a queen of this other kingdom who secretly has this revenge plot against the prince and his parents. And yeah, the plot kind of plays out with Ro and her family from the island kind of learning about this society, this kingdom that they have no familiarity with, and Rose falling in love with the prince, but then at the same time the prince has this duty to marry this other princess. Things come to head at the engagement ball where the date of the wedding is moved up, and the evil Queen Ariana poisons the kingdom's animals, frames Ro and Ro's family for doing it, for bringing a disease in. But Ro and Tika and Sagi, I believe that's his name, and Azul are being taken back to their island when the plot here is a little complicated because Ariana has this other thing where she's trying to murder Ro. They end up in the water. The dolphins save them. Ro swoops in to save the day, stop the wedding, and she finds out she is actually Princess Rosella, the daughter of the queen of a different kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And then she and the prince get married, and Princess Luciana, the daughter of Queen Ariana, who's actually a nice person despite her mom, ends up vaguely with someone, and Ariana ends up in the mud with the pigs.
That's the last we see of her.
Yep.
Here's a question, though. What happens to her? She's a queen.
Yeah.
Like, do they put her in prison? Does she have diplomatic immunity? What happens to her?
Yeah, because technically speaking, she would be the highest authority in her kingdom.
Yeah, this would be like an act of war.
Yeah. I mean, I assume that Princess Luciana just kind of took over the kingdom, but it isn't really discussed.
No, but it does bring up an interesting question, like what happens? Do these two kingdoms go at it? Probably not.
Yeah, I don't know what the creators of the movie were envisioning, if anything. I do think the moment when she ends up in the pig pen is actually a really good moment of payoff, because her early in the movie, Queen Ariana sings a song about, "This is who I am. I'm the evil queen that's trying to poison the kingdom," because her family, when she was a kid, tried to poison the king and the queen and got banished for treason and lived on a pig farm. So that is why throughout the movie, Queen Ariana hates the pigs, comments on it at least once.
Right, yeah.
Then ends up back with the pigs. Kind of a poetic justice there.
There's a lot of like things coming full circle in this film.
Yeah, the third act brings a lot of disparate elements together.
I think the third act of this one is a lot of moments of this film, I think, reuse moments from Princess and the Pauper, but they fix some of the issues. For instance, Princess and the Pauper had a wedding, which was odd, but this one, the wedding makes sense.
Yeah.
Also, it's a similar evil villain plan of taking over a kingdom, but this one, there's a little bit more to it, where this one's just greedy. She just wants all the kingdoms.
There is that revenge element as well. The third act does a very good job just bringing everything back together in a satisfying way. Because you also have things like, I mean, there's a lot of plot lines going on. You have Ro trying to sort of find her place, trying to fit in with this high society, but then also not lose sight of who she is. Then you have Prince Antonio, who's sort of torn between duty and love, kind of similar to Princess and the Pauper, though, with the gender roles reversed. Tika the elephant has maybe the biggest arc in the movie, where she's afraid of Ro leaving her, and so she has to learn to trust Ro. Ariana has her evil plot to take over the kingdom, and the movie's just kind of setting these things up throughout the first two acts, and they're kind of all over the place, jumping back and forth between these plot lines. But then once the conclusion begins, all of the plot lines kind of come together. Yeah, it's also very much based in the characters and their motivations, because we have a bunch of characters whose wants and desires influence their actions in a way that drives the plot forward, rather than the plot happening and the characters reacting to it. We have things like Ro wants to find out where she's from, and that causes a lot of the plot to fall into motion. Antonio makes a lot of decisions, some of them a bit impulsive, because he's not quite sure if he should choose duty or love. Tika the elephant does a lot of things throughout the movie, but especially near the end, where it's like, okay, she's having this very significant influence on the story. Even Princess Luciana, her actions and her motivations are very important to how things play out. And all of these characters have inner conflicts that take the plot in new directions. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, we have Ro. She's torn between her home, her island, and this society of people who she's supposed to fit in with, but doesn't. She has to kind of find a balance between the two. Antonio's torn between his love of adventure and his love of Ro, and then his duty to the kingdom. Luciana is torn between her duty to her mother and her desire for true love. And I don't think we've seen, at least not to this extent, such a character-driven story in these Barbie movies. Usually it's more like, even Princess and the Pauper, it's Preminger has this evil plot, and the heroes are reacting to his plot, to the various
Mm-hmm.
elements of it. Whereas
Right.
here, so much of Ariana's plot only really takes effect in the last act. So for the first two acts, it's all of these characters sort of bouncing off each other.
Right. I will say though, I think Ro might be the few in the beginning is one of the few that's more responsive because she doesn't question herself until the prince comes in. I think she should have had one moment of like, I wonder where it came from. I don't know, and then move on. For instance, her song, asking questions. I think the opening of that song probably should have been done so much sooner in the film. Because all we see in the beginning is that she's happy with her place. She doesn't have any questions. It's great.
Yeah, because once they introduce the idea that she has questions about her place in the world, it feels like it's something that she's been feeling for a long time, but we don't get a sense of that prior to her saying it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it could have benefited if we had,
Just one moment
yeah.
of her and her father's just having a conversation. Like a small little conversation of like, did they keep any of the stuff that they found? Like the jewelry. What happened to the jewelry?
It is an interesting side effect of the way that they've structured this movie, where both Princess and the Pauper and this movie are taking a lot of inspiration from the Disney Renaissance musicals, which those musicals had like very specific ways of like structures in terms of which songs go where, which characters have their moments where. And then here, this movie sticks more to it than, because Princess and the Pauper starts with an I want song, where the first thing we know about the two main characters is what they want, what are their goals in life. Whereas this movie we start with Here on My Island, which is a song establishing a place.
Yeah, this specific musical film felt the most like your typical musical theater experience, where they're not talking about characters; they're talking about location. Sometimes they'll have inner monologue, like the question song, or just something to sound catchy. And I'll speak more into the music later on when we get to that. But yeah, this film, I was like getting towards the end. I was just thinking back through the entire plot, even just the plot. It was like, this feels like your typical musical theater experience. It's like, you got the guy who shows up, meets the girl, they fall in love, and you have this queen thing.
Yeah. Even just because starting with a song that establishes location is a very common musical trope.
Like, even having, like, a love triangle is a common musical trope. With the arranged couple. And it's like, you gotta find your true love. It's very traditional theater.
Yeah. And then, like, the I Want song is the fourth song in the movie. It comes after Right Here in My Arms and A Brand New Shore. That's when I Need to Know, the song where both Ro and Prince Antonio, that's his name, Ken, are both singing What They Want. And then we get the villain song, and we get the Getting Ready for the Ball song. We get the rat song, which it's an interesting inclusion. I like it, but it is kind of the song you need least here.
It is.
And then we have Always More, which is the song that Ro sings to Tika. That's sort of the end of the second act, beginning of the third act song.
I think the best song is probably the last one.
Okay.
The reunion song.
Right Here in My Arms?
Yeah, with the mother.
Yeah, that's the one that pays off, because in the beginning you hear half of the song.
It's an actual plot element versus here's a catchy song.
Yeah, that's the one that feels the most diegetic.
That one and the question song, kind of.
Yeah, because the question song is happening in the characters' minds for the most part. What I do like about I Need to Know a lot is that, and multiple of the songs in this movie, is that they very clearly come at points where the characters can no longer express what they need to express in words. So, for example, I Need to Know starts with Ro's family has gathered around, and I believe Sagi asks her, like, or maybe it's Tika asks, like, why do you want to go with this prince? What's your motivation here? And she can't really find the words for it, so instead she sings this song. And the song then expresses these emotions that she can't say. And then I think Always More as well comes at a point where Ro doesn't quite know how to explain to Tika this idea of love as a growing thing, not as a confined and finite resource. So yeah, she breaks into song. And yeah, it is interesting comparing this to Princess and the Pauper, in that this feels more like a traditional musical.
Right, and I'm not the biggest fan of traditional musicals.
Yeah, I for me it really depends. For me, a lot of it is how long the musical is.
Right.
And this is relatively short. It's longer for a Barbie movie, but not particularly long. It is, I believe, an hour and 23 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting how it follows a lot of the formal structures of these movies. The third act of this movie is also great because it's really exciting. Because you have a lot of these sort of big things happening where it's like, there's poisoning, there's political intrigue, there's attempted murder, there's an elephant chase. It's the kind of excitement we haven't seen in quite a few movies.
Right. Why was Ro put into prison?
I believe it was just like a quarantine type thing.
No.
No?
No.
What is the... Oh, no. Because she comes back to the island. Or to the kingdom.
No, it's not that.
No?
It's like after, it's like, oh, Her animals must be, like, causing plague and disease. We'll throw her in prison.
Yeah. I
I don't
assumed
know.
it was just a quarantine type
Yeah, but, like, they
thing.
specifically referred to her as a prisoner.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
I guess they just needed a scene in prison or something.
Yeah, because, like, Ken's like, you throw her in prison, let her go back to her island, and I'll marry this other chick.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I'm very questioning, is, like, why is it necessary to put her in prison? It's not her fault. She has a plague.
Yeah.
Like, quarantine would make sense, but in a prison where she's not being treated well.
Well, yeah. Overall, I gave the story a 4 out of 5. I think it all comes together really well in the end. And I like that it's character driven.
I give it a 3.5. I still think it's solid, but I don't know. I don't love this one. It could just be the heavy influence of the typical musical theater experience, and I don't love a lot of those tropes. So
Yeah,
there's moments
that's
that I
fair.
really like, but most of it's like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, next up we have the characters. This is honestly where I have more to say because this movie is so character driven.
Mm-hmm.
The characters have a lot to do. So first up is Ro, aka Princess Rosella. I know I say this quite often, but she is actually one of the more interesting Barbie heroes. What I think makes her really interesting, though, is that she's a third culture kid. Third culture kids are kids whose parents are from one culture, but who have lived in a different culture.
Born in human world, but grew up on the island.
Yeah, in this movie, that's how it works. But there are actually it's a real world group of people, which I'm a third culture kid, and I hope I'm not blowing up your spot by saying you are as well.
What? I am. No, I am. Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we both grew up kind of between
Mm-hmm.
two different cultures, and it is interesting in how it affects the way you see the world and the way you see things like the concept of home and where do you belong if you're part of two different cultures but not fully a part of either of them, so you don't really belong in either of them. Well, where do you find your place in the world? And that's what Ro's conflict is born out of, where she's on this island and we can kind of presume that she doesn't fully feel like she fits in there, but she has her family and she has this life that she enjoys. And then someone comes from the outside world and she's like, "Oh, maybe that's where I belong." Then she goes there and she's like, "Oh, no, I don't really belong here either."
Hmm.
And she kind of has to find her worth as someone who can move between these two cultures and who has these two different influences. And there's even things like she speaks two languages. That's a common third culture kid thing, being able to sort of move between and translate between two different languages. She has a lot of traits of both cultures, but doesn't fully fit in either. I think the dress song does a really good job exploring this, where on the one hand you have Tallulah the monkey, who's sort of this high society influence, and then you have Sagi, the red panda, who's Ro's father, and he's the island influence. And then Ro's just like, well, I don't really fit it either, so why don't we combine the two? And that's how she gets her big dress for the movie.
Mm-hmm. That big dress.
Yeah, it's a good dress.
It needs more green. That's my
Yeah,
critique. It's like, it could use a little bit more green accents.
and green is actually a color that has association with third culture kids because it's a combination of blue, one distinct color, and yellow, a different distinct color. So you would get that as well, a little bit of thematic. But no, here it's just blue, which she is the island princess, so having the ocean blue is But yeah, I think what's interesting about Rose's arc is that she's learning to find comfort in her family and friends. What I think doesn't work about her arc is the reveal that she's a princess.
Yeah, even though that was obvious from the very minute she appeared on screen. It's like, oh, she's a princess. Look at that chest full of items. She has a title in the film. Plus, if they're following your traditional musical theater experience, she's gonna be a princess.
Yeah,
It's how it happens.
I understand why it's there, but I think it makes the ending less interesting.
It does. It makes Antonio's sacrifice and the king's willingness to allow it weaker. Because it's like, oh, thank heaven, she is a princess.
Yeah,
Versus like, all right, fine, marry the common lady.
yeah. Even the idea of for Rose arc, so much of it is built into her relationship with her adopted family. So to be like, okay, now here's her real family and they're also royalty. It's like it's too easy a solution where she's like she finds what she's been looking for. But I don't really get the sense that what she was looking for, or how do I put this?
She doesn't question constantly who she is
Yeah,
that often, like what her family is. She does earlier on, and maybe once more, but then it's almost forgotten about.
it doesn't feel like the fulfillment to her arc, except for the song thing. And the
Right.
song thing is really good payoff. But I wonder if it would have worked better if Rose's mom hadn't been the queen. Yeah, the thing I kind of compared it to, and this is maybe controversial, but it reminded me of Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, where
Yeah, that makes sense.
Rey is revealed to. In the previous movie, Rey had been revealed to be, oh, you're no one. You aren't part of any of these great galactic dynasties. And then in the next movie, it's, oh no, you were actually part of one. We were lying. And it's like, sometimes it's more interesting to have a character who comes from the outside. And in this movie, especially, I think it would have been so much more interesting if Ro wasn't revealed to be a princess.
But it was the obvious decision.
Yep. She's also wearing a towel for a lot of the movie.
I know. I know. It's like, as soon as she was on the boat, entering the land of the kingdom, I'm thinking, I don't know, this is a little bit taboo for that time period. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah. I mean, the thing that bothered me more was that she wasn't wearing shoes.
Oh, that's fine.
Like, just imagine the walking around the kingdom, or even the deck of a ship. That's a wooden ship.
And she's stepping on rocks and sticks.
But the island seems to be a lot of like dirt paths and sand, and whereas when she gets to the kingdom, it's more like hard stone, and yeah, it just didn't seem all that pleasant. I didn't pay attention enough to see when she finally did get shoes, but I'm assuming she did.
I don't remember.
I do love the dress that she designs for herself. I think it's a clever, just like it needs to be in the movie for her character.
I think the peacock feathers are a bit much. Like, I probably would have used those feathers as starting just at the collar, as a collar, the back collar, and not being that large, just like the top of the feathers, starting at the collar versus down at her hips.
Yeah, I like what they're going for with it. I did actually I'm kind of as we're watching these movies, I'm working through a video rating the Barbie movie costumes on historical accuracy from the YouTuber Karolina Zabrowska. And for this particular dress, it's not very accurate to the time period. But what this YouTuber suggests is there's a different dress with peacock feathers where it's actually the peacock feathers are part of the skirt. And the illustration of it looks great. So that would have been maybe the direction I would have taken it, but I don't know. I like how it is in the movie.
Mm. Mm.
It's at the very least a very good synthesis of these two sides of her character.
I get that, but it's too much blue. Not enough other colors.
Yeah, the pink is a bit much.
It is. It really is.
A yellow would have been more, or an orange. That would have fit the tropical theme as well.
Yeah, but pink is Barbie.
Yeah, I think that's part of what's motivating them with this dress design. Yeah, next up we have Prince Antonio. He's a good love interest here.
He has actual wants of like, I want to explore. Kind of, it's kind of like Princess and the Pauper.
Yeah.
He's a role reversal of like, I don't want to be here, I want to explore. But here he marries the girl before exploring.
Which, I do like the sort of twist on that where it's like, oh, they're married, but they're going exploring. Like, that's
nice.
That's the thing that draws them together.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's interesting about him as well is that he makes a lot of decisions based on impulses, which makes the plot more interesting. Where he meets this girl on an island, he's just like, oh yeah, you can come along, come meet my parents. And then later on in the movie, he's like, okay, well, at first he wants to sort of leave the kingdom and be like, no, I don't want to be king if I can't marry who I want. And then he only changes his mind to help Ro. And yeah, I mean, his romance with Ro could have been explored better. They don't get a ton of time together.
They don't.
Because they're kind of wrapped up in their own plot lines.
He spends a lot of time with the other girl. What's her name?
Luciana, yeah.
Yeah, Luciana.
I mean, they have different plot lines going, so I get it. But I could have used a scene or two between Antonio and Ro.
Yeah.
Sort of in that time period between when Ro arrives in the kingdom and when the engagement ball happens. There isn't much interaction between the two of them in that chunk of the movie. But yeah, all around just a very strong love interest and a character in his own right as well.
Yeah.
So next up I have Tika, who the first thing you need to know about Tika is that she's just a kid. Because I've seen a lot of people talking online about how, oh, she's such an annoying character, she's whiny, she's selfish. And it's like, yeah, that's because she's like a child. And she acts like a child would. She isn't motivated by selfishness. She does act selfishly, but she's motivated by fear.
Yeah.
And that's one of the first things we know about her is this nightmare that she has that, like, Ro has to comfort her. And that she has this fear that is sort of going on underneath the surface, and it's this fear of rejection, of abandonment, of losing the only family she has. And she makes a decision to... There's Prince Antonio leaves a note for Ro, and Tika hides the note because she's worried that Ro will leave her. And it is a selfish decision, but it's also one that I could totally see a kid in this position making that exact same decision. And it makes her character more complex. That she isn't just like the perfect stand-up citizen. She's got an inner life going on and these fears that are guiding her decisions. And then, yeah, she has, like I said, she has the biggest arc in the movie.
Yeah. especially for an animal sidekick. We haven't really had much of an animal sidekick with a strong role or even character arcs technically since Magic of Pegasus, but the Pegasus was actually a person. But
Yeah.
thinking back, it's really Rapunzel with Penelope. So it was good to see that again, even though this design is not as strong as Penelope's.
Yeah, her design is a little bit off-putting. Her mouth is a little bit too large.
Yeah, like also just having her be next to Saki and Azul, who look exactly like those animals. Her
Yeah.
a little bit more stylized to look more like a kid-friendly toy to get.
Also, just like elephants have naturally wrinkly skin, and it's a little bit like the textures are a little bit like they aren't as cute on an animated elephant as they are on a real life elephant. Yeah, but
Yeah.
again, I think design wise, a little bit off putting. Character wise, maybe a little bit annoying, but not in a way that is unintended by the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, next up, we have one of Ro's two gay dads, Sagi.
Mm-hmm.
He's the red panda. He's the more rational and grounded of the two. He's the one who kind of takes on the role of Ro's father figure more so throughout the movie. He's a bit more parental, a bit more sort of aware of what's going on and aware of
Yeah.
Ro's emotions. But I also just love the scene where he argues about the dress and is giving this fashion advice, which really isn't very good fashion advice, but he cares a lot about his daughter and he understands her identity as someone who grew up on this island, but he doesn't quite understand how to fit that in with this new world that they're joining, this high society of this kingdom.
I also love that he is the one who's able to recognize the flag.
Yeah.
It's such an obscure detail that for him to remember that, like, he is observant enough to point it out.
Yeah. The very large contrast to Prince Azul Vasu Morantha the Fourth, who is too vain to function.
He's Fabian
Yes.
as a peacock.
Yes. He's Ro's other gay dad. He is pretty much exactly the personality I would expect a peacock to have.
Yeah.
Self-obsessed, self-absorbed, but not in a way that's meant to come off as bad. It's more a comedic relief thing.
Yeah, no. I didn't really care much about him. I like it. I like his design, but he was just kind of there.
Yeah, I mean, we established in the last episode, I enjoy this character archetype. I don't think I responded as strongly to Azul as I did to Fabian in the last movie, but I think he's fun. He has a lot of good comedic moments, and then his big moment is when he demonstrates how much he cares about Ro, which is when he gives her his feathers for the dress. And it's this moment, and I wish there were more moments after this, where it's just like, oh, he's being completely selfless, even though throughout the movie he's been established as very vain, but he isn't just vain.
Mm-hmm.
And even he's just vain and yet selfless in that scene. It's an interesting sort of contradiction that I think they could have explored more, but I like the elements that they have here. And then we have the villains. So Queen Ariana is fun. She's a fun villain.
I mean, it's our typical villain. It's the Preminger type wanting to rule the kingdom, except this one's actually royalty.
Yeah, she's a bit darker than
She is.
Preminger. She's
She will kill. Like,
Yeah.
she has killed. She don't care.
She married a king of a different kingdom, and they killed him so that she could be in charge, so that she could execute this revenge plot. And that is, I think, more than wanting to rule the kingdom, she is motivated by revenge, which is interesting for one of these Barbie characters to have that.
Right, but I feel like most of her dialogue is referring to like, my daughter will rule the kingdom because I rule her. Less of like revenge, because we only really get the revenge aspect once
We
when
we
she
get it in
sings
her
about her
songs,
backstory.
yeah,
Yeah,
and then even just the idea of poisoning everyone. When she's poisoning the cake, I think she even says, like, finally I will have my revenge, or a line to that same effect. I mean, she's not the most memorable villain we've had,
no,
but she is darker in a fun way. And also, I just love her hairdo. She has, I believe it's the similar hairdo to the villain in the last movie, whose
yeah,
name escapes me.
I don't know, someone.
Wasn't she? Duchess Rowena, that's who it was.
Yeah, yeah. Two very good designs, specifically in their color schemes. Although I like
Yeah.
Rowena better.
Yeah, Rowena had the more intricate
Mm-hmm.
dress. But yeah, Ariana has the sort of the
The red,
maroon and red. Yeah.
the red panda design, pretty much.
Yep. And yeah, her daughter is Princess Luciana, who
Mm-hmm.
we don't get to see a ton of her, but she's a really solid character. I like that she is actually really nice,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's very clear that like both she and Antonio are good people, but they just have absolutely nothing in common. Like, it's almost comical how little they have in common. That scene where they're dancing at the ball and they're trying desperately to find some connection and they just can't. It's a fun moment. And you can clearly tell that especially Luciana is she wants this to work because she's motivated by a search for true love. But
Yeah.
she's not going to force anything, which
No.
is the opposite of her mother. The other royal characters we have here are King Peter and Queen Danielle. They are Prince Antonio's parents, and they don't quite understand their son. They see his longing for adventure as kind of like a phase, whereas for Antonio it's more of like a deep passion. And they aren't evil, but they are very pragmatic in a way that makes them a little cold. Like, King Peter does not hesitate to move the wedding up when he realizes that there's a chance his son might do something to call the wedding off because he's in love with someone else. And yeah, I mean they're kind of the typical king and queen characters in these sort of duty versus love romances,
Right.
but they serve their purpose.
They're there.
Mm-hmm.
They cause problems, but they're there.
Yeah. And the queen's pet monkey is
Oh,
Tallulah.
Tallulah. Tallulah was first like introduced. It took me a couple seconds for me to register that was a monkey. I just looked at her and was like, man, that's one messed up child.
Yeah, her design is odd.
Very odd.
And the fact that she's wearing a
I, I,
tiara.
I get the color. I get the design they're going with, but it doesn't work for me.
Yeah. I do think as a character she's interesting because she actually has a lot of stuff to do here.
Until she falls asleep, yeah.
Until she falls asleep, yeah. She's kind of this character who understands Ro as sort of they're both kind of in between these worlds of their islands and then this high society life. And I just love the scene where the two of them are connecting and Ro is teaching Tallulah how to climb trees again. I think that's a really fun moment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say her story has some uncomfortable implications, where she was taken from from her home and forced to conform to these high society expectations. Like it says a little bit about the queen that she was like, oh yeah, here's a monkey, I want that as my pet, who will now have to learn manners.
Oh, okay. So here's another question.
Yeah.
How many animals did Ro know on the island? And how come she wasn't surprised to see any new animals? Like, when she went to the mainland, I'm thinking, oh, there's a horse carriage. Has she never seen a horse before? I hope she's excited to see horses. Or pigs.
Yeah, they skip over a lot of the, and I think it is somewhat to the benefit of they don't have a scene where Ro picks up a fork and says, "Oh, what's this?" But at the same time, it's like they're missing an opportunity there, as you
Oh,
pointed
that
out.
that would have been a really good character moment to show
Yeah,
that she grew up in a different culture, just being shocked by a different animal.
yeah, because I think you can overplay that, which I think the Disney Little Mermaid does,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, "Oh, she's from a different world, and now we're gonna spend a lot of time on how exactly that affects things." But yeah, there could have been a scene at some point to establish that a bit better. Now, the last characters I have down here are the three mice. I don't believe they get names.
They do.
They do? Okay.
I think it's like Matt, Pat, and some other name.
Matt, Pat, and Welcome to Game Theory.
Yeah, it's Matt, Pat.
It's
Me,
Nat and Pat, and
yeah, Matt.
Matt is the mime rat.
Yeah, yep. That's it.
Okay. Yeah. They don't have much character. They will do anything for cheese. That's the one thing we know about them. And I want to say that's a very relatable motivation.
Sure.
Cheese is good.
It's sad that they don't get the cheese. They just
Yeah.
die.
Poor rats.
But I do like the symbolic gesture of like these rats are spreading diseases.
Yeah. And even that Rowena was, or not Rowena, Ariana was smart enough to use the rats to do the spreading of this thing, which sort of goes along with her plan to frame Ro.
Now it does bring up an interesting question. How does she communicate with the rats to do her deeds?
Yeah, I think it's just the thing of all of the animals can understand English and only Ro can understand the animals. And that must be like a generally understood thing.
Mm,
Because even like Tallulah is treated like a human
right,
who
you're
can't
right. But
talk.
Antonio doesn't talk to the crocodiles. Be like, hey, don't eat me.
Yeah, I don't know what. Yeah, the exact mechanics of what's going on with the animal communications is a bit odd.
Hmm.
It's not quite as simple as like Doctor Doolittle. Yeah, there's some. Again, like I said at the beginning, it's a bit of like a magical thing where you kind of just have to go along with it because it doesn't make sense otherwise. Yeah. Overall, I gave the characters a 4.5 out of 5 because they're so interesting. And this is a character driven story. And the characters have interesting motivations and interesting inner conflicts that then come out in ways that affect the plot.
Yeah, this is a number that's likely gonna change further down the line. But at the moment, I give it a 3.5, where I think they're
Okay.
solid. But at the moment, I wasn't really grasping to any of the characters as strongly as before, really.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think one of the reasons I connected is just with Roe as a third culture kid. That isn't something that occurred to me right away,
Mm.
but once I kind of put two and two together, it was like, oh, now I see her character completely differently.
It could also just be like a lot of these characters end up being the musical theater stereotype of, okay, this one has the evil plan, this is the third wheel love interest triangle. We have the friend who's a little bit selfish, doesn't want this thing to happen. The parents who don't understand.
Yeah, it is taking these characters. For me, it all worked, but I definitely understand how.
Mm. But animation,
Animation,
I thought the opening shot was beautiful,
yeah.
and the rest was okay.
Yeah, it was a little bit underwhelming. I think especially the island at the beginning. Like certain areas look really good. The treehouse and the beach areas look good, but a
Mm.
lot of the backgrounds are just kind of ugly and flat. There isn't enough range in the colors to make it feel lush and alive. It's a lot of like duller greens and dull blues instead of blacks,
I
and
think the weakest thing as well is also the mud animation hitting the characters.
yeah, mud does not look like mud in this movie.
No, they're still working on their liquids.
Yeah, the water looks great,
Water looks great.
which is what you need for an island princess movie.
Most of the character designs look great too.
Yeah, I just think especially the island at the beginning needs more pops of color,
Mm-hmm.
because they have the greens down and they have the browns and they have the blues from the water, and the shadows of all of the trees are blue. Not quite sure why. Those probably should have been black to make the colors pop a little bit better. But you also need like the flowers and things to make the island feel exotic and alive. Which I mean it already does feel exotic and alive, but I think there could have been like a little bit more. I will say the animals are well designed here.
Yeah, most of them. The monkey and the elephant could do a little bit more
Yeah.
work.
The textures on them, like Sagi's fur and Azul's feathers, are very well designed. And then even things like they finally figured out how to do dolphins, how to not make the dolphins look like the Joker version of dolphins.
Yeah, no, that was great.
And then another thing I noticed is that this movie has a lot of cameos from
I
character
I
models from other
I
movies.
saw Felix the parrot. Yeah.
Yep. Felix the Parrot, both Serafina and Wolfie from Princess and the Pauper show
Mm-hmm.
up. There are other sort of characters from different movies showing up, and then several of the 12 Dancing Princesses show up.
Of
And a few
course,
of them show up in their original dresses, which that seems like a cost saving measure, but
it
it is kind of
is.
fun to spot. Obviously, I couldn't tell who was who.
Of course, especially when you have the prince's three sisters who are the same character model with different hair
Yep.
colors. I mean,
Yeah, I couldn't tell if our favorite late night show host, Fallon, showed up from 12 Dancing Princesses, but I think it's a cost saving measure, but I think it's fun to be able to spot those little details and those references to other movies.
mm-hmm.
And they never like get in the way of the story. There was just something missing from this in terms of animation.
I mean, overall, it's overall it's just solid generally.
Yeah.
It was just a couple things didn't work out.
Yeah. I think if the island had looked better at the beginning, and if Tika and Tallulah had been better, I would give this a higher score. But yeah, right now I have a 3.5 out of 5 as my score for the animation.
Yeah, I'd have 3.5 as well. Generally, that's how most animation looks. So
Yeah, it's good, but it could be better.
it always could be better.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like as much of an improvement as some of these have been.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, next up we have voice acting. We once again have Kelly Sheridan as our protagonist. She's playing Ro.
Mm-hmm.
Really solid performance once again. Melissa Lyons does her singing voice, returning from Princess and the Pauper and 12 Dancing Princesses, and
Mm-hmm.
really solid singing voice. The two performances mesh well together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there isn't a ton of technical stuff going on here, but I think just being able to mesh the vocal and the singing performances, that's worth shouting out.
It is. Yeah.
We also have Alessandro Giuliani. He's playing Prince Antonio, and he's been good in all of these movies that he's been in.
I mean, they're all generally the same, but they're good.
Yeah, I think he shines especially in the songs. And then he also has a moment where he's imitating Azul. It's just a little fun vocal moment.
Yeah.
And speaking of Azul, we have Steve Marvel as Azul. He is a new actor to these Barbie movies. He This is his first Barbie movie, and I believe his only Barbie movie. He's a TV actor, although he hasn't been in much that I recognize. This might honestly be his most high profile role, and he just knocks it out of the park. He captures exactly what you need Azul to be, this sort of self important, self obsessed, vain peacock who just the line delivery works so well.
Yeah.
And then I believe he also does some of the squawking for him. So
There's a lot of newer people here that I don't recognize.
yeah, because we do also have yeah, just new people all around in the cast. Just looking at it, we have Susan Roman as Tika. We have Patricia Drake as Queen Danielle. We have Bets Malone as Tallulah. Which these aren't. I didn't do much research into these performers. But yeah, it's interesting to have new voices here.
Yeah. One thing of note that I found when looking at the cast list is that we of course have Britt McKillop returning. She does a lot of just background voices. But interestingly though, her sister Carly McKillop is here as well. And this is her only Barbie role. She doesn't do a lot. I thought that was interesting. I didn't really realize that she had a
Yeah,
sister.
and they are playing sisters in this movie, so that's kind of a real
Correct.
world parallel.
It's odd.
We also have Andrea Martin playing Queen Ariana.
Mm-hmm.
This is her first and only Barbie movie. She's kind of filling in as the celebrity voice here, though she's not as big as any of the other celebrity voices we've
No.
had. But she was in My Big Fat Greek Wedding and Hedwig and the Angry Inch. So she is known for things outside of voice acting. And I think she does a great job, particularly in her song where she integrates an evil laugh into the song. And it's just such a great moment, and I'll probably talk about it again when we talk about that song. But yeah, overall a great performance.
Yeah.
And then the last performance I wanted to spotlight was Candice Nicole, who's playing Princess Luciana. This is her first and only Barbie movie, and she doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have many credits outside of this. But I think she did a very good job making Princess Luciana likable, which is important because her character is very limited in terms of how much time we have to spend with her. And so we have to get the sense that she's a good person very early on, and I think she did a good job. So yeah, overall, I gave the voice acting a 4.5 out of 5. Just strong across the board. Some really solid performances, some standout voices here. And
Yeah,
the singing as well bumps up that score a little bit.
of course. And I gave it a 4 because we got a lot of new people who do solid performances. And, of course, singing.
Yeah. And speaking of that singing, we have music up next.
Music.
More of these movies should be musicals.
Yeah. I mean, yes. I agree. But it really depends on how they do the musicals.
Yeah. This isn't as strong as Princess and the Pauper. Even the lyric writing isn't nearly as strong, although there are quite a few more songs, so I can understand why.
They're solid. I don't love them immediately. They're also just stylized very typical, again, traditional musical theater in the way that they are mostly there to set up the world, less of the characters, and more just be fun.
Yeah. I do think they are well integrated into the story.
Mostly,
Um,
yes.
but yeah, I don't imagine I'll be listening to most of these songs on their own. Like, I've been listening to the Princess and the Pauper soundtrack every once in a while.
It immediately caught my attention, and I love the way it
Yeah.
sounds. Here, the performances are good. Some moments I like, but I don't love it.
Yeah. I've honestly even listened to songs from Barbie Diaries more than I think I'll listen to most of these songs.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, just by having songs, the story is able to quickly establish characters, locations, and motivations.
I wish they did that more with Ro.
But it sticks in your brain when
It
it's
does. It does.
introduced in a song. Whereas, 12 Dancing Princesses, we were commenting on it in our review, you don't remember any of the princesses, but you can imagine if there had been a song where each princess says, I'm Princess Fallon and I do late night talk shows.
Mm-hmm.
Like that would stick in your head. So, especially since this movie has a lot of characters and a lot of people you have to keep track of and a lot of plot lines, the music helps fill in the gaps. And yeah, I wrote down my favorites. This is in order of when they appear in the movie. I didn't rank them in terms of how much I like them. But first up, we have Here on My Island. That's the first song in the movie, kind of the introduction to the island and island life. And it does a really good job establishing the island as this sort of paradise that then,
I still would prefer more of the characters in the song.
yeah, I think it would have been, as you're saying, give Ro a little, not even like a verse, just like a few little lines in there of like, where did I come from? How did I get to this island? And then maybe even have like Tika butt in and say, but that's not important because we're here on the island. That would kind of
Sure.
foreshadow the conflict between those two characters a bit more. But yeah, I think as a table setting song, it works. It kind of gets you in the mood of the movie. And then, yeah, the next song I like is more of a character song. It's I Need to Know. This is the I Want song where Ro and Antonio are singing about, I need to know these answers. I need to find my way.
Yeah, I think this is the one I like the most because it's the characters' inner thoughts.
Yeah. I think it's also just the strongest musically.
It probably is, yeah.
I even just like when Ro is listing things of like, is this the tree he sleeps in? What can he see from up there? Sort of, she's exploring the world, but very internally. She's not asking these questions. She's figuring them out for herself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Next up, I also really like the song Love is for Peasants. Now, I think the song overall is okay. It's establishing Ariana's evil plot and her backstory and Luciana's sort of reluctance. But what really sells it is the ending, which integrates not Rowena, Ariana's evil laugh into the music. That moment sells the song for me. Yeah, next up, I also really liked At the Ball. This is the song where they're trying to figure out what Ro will wear to the ball.
Oh, okay.
And it's just kind of fun. There isn't a ton of plot significance, but there is a lot of thematic significance of Rose kind of trying to figure out what her place is, and is she an islander or is she a human, and where does she fit in? And then the conclusion of the song is both Ro being like, okay, let's find a way to synthesize these two things, and then also you have that moment with Azul where he gives up his feathers.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just think it's such a nice little song to have in there. And then the rat song, it's just fun. Doesn't need to be in there, but
I would take it out. It's very traditional musical theater. I could see why they have it, but still.
I think having the scene of the rats poisoning the animals without the song would be a bit boring. So I think the song serves a purpose, even though the characters don't really have any role in the plot outside of the song.
It does lead into a joke, which is fun.
And you kind of know from the very beginning that they aren't gonna get anything out of this. And I do like the bit of, like, one of the rats is a mime. Doesn't really affect anything, but I think it's kind of a funny little detail. For me, the music was good. It wasn't stellar, but just for the fact that it's a musical, I bumped it up a half a point. So I give it a 4.5 out of 5.
I give it a 4.5 out of 5 as well. It does more to just move the plot along in an interesting way.
I had fun with this movie. It's a solid one. I think just for the fact of being a musical, and also for the fact that it's character driven.
Yeah, it is solid, but it's just so much like other things I've already seen so many times. Just working in theater, like I see these type of plots so many times, and I'm really tired of them. Which is a shame. But no, this brings my score to 19, which is the general score for like solid films in the Barbie films, which is 76% and a 3.85 star rating.
I gave it a 21 total out of 25. That's 84% or a 4.2 on the 5-star rating. That puts it up pretty high here. It might break into my top 4.
I think it does, yeah.
It goes ever so slightly edges out 12 Dancing Princesses. They actually have the same score, but it wins the tiebreaker that we've set up. So
yeah,
which is the tiebreaker. I don't know if we've mentioned it before, but just for ranking purposes, if 2 movies have the same score, then we go down the list. So first, whichever has the highest story score, whichever has the highest character score, just kind of individually going down. So yeah, since the story was solid, it just edges out 12 Dancing Princesses for me.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a long explanation for a short.
Yeah, like at the moment, it's probably in the mid-range of my 19s.
Okay.
Like, it'll probably grow.
Yeah.
But right now, with my musical bias, That's where it stands.
Well, any thoughts to take us home?
Papayas.
Yes, papayas. There should have been more fruit in this movie, although there was quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
There were pineapples and coconuts. I'll have to look at the musical numbers to see what fruits they had.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, thank you everyone for listening. Make sure you follow us on social media. We are Binging Barbie Podcast on Instagram, at Binging Barbie on Twitter, and Binging Barbie, a Barbie movie podcast on Letterboxd. There you can find an up-to-date list of all of our Barbie movie rankings. If you're curious to see exactly where this movie falls, that's the place to check. And join us next week for a return to the world of Fairytopia.
What?
With a new set of characters and a new series. Barbie Mariposa.
No. No.
Oh, yep. It's a spin-off.
Oh, no.
Barbie Mariposa.
No.